Let's take a detailed look at the concept of the tipping point of a material consequence as it relates to quality in clinical trials in a pharmaceutical company. There's a current movement in quality across industries to extend the quality mindset from one of primarily compliance to one of being a stakeholder in maximizing the value of the enterprise. Let's explore a way to do this. And in this example, I'm going to introduce the difference between a project decision frame and an enterprise decision frame. We all have to keep in mind we're employees of the enterprise, not the project. And it is our fiduciary responsibility to do what is best for the enterprise. In clinical trials, it is common to create and execute an Integrated Quality Management Plan, or IQMP. The IQMP addresses 4 elements of quality relating to patient safety, patient rights, data quality and trial integrity, and compliance to plan. Clinical trial project leaders must manage for budget, schedule, and quality with respect to these 4 elements. When project issues arise with respect to budget, schedule, or quality, some of these issues are categorized as must-dos, while others are evaluated for the best course of action. However, in all cases, the project leader must understand the implication or delta change in the project cost and/or the delta change in project completion date. The project leader, who is accountable for the success of the clinical trial, makes decisions from the perspective of the project, and this constitutes a project-only decision frame. Of course, clinical trial project managers understand that clinical trial success has implications beyond just the project. Ultimately, the timing and success of the project have downstream implication for the company's future revenue and costs. However, it is not common practice to integrate these insights into the project decisions unless you explicitly expand the decision frame from a project-only decision frame to an enterprise decision frame, and this is how you do it. First of all, the project costs must be expanded to include the total change in costs to the enterprise, and those change in costs ultimately impact the value of the enterprise. Changes in the project completion date may impact the product launch date, which in turn impacts product sales, which again impact the value of the enterprise. And finally, project issues regarding quality outcomes may improve or reduce the probability of regulatory approval, which once again impacts enterprise value. Managing the tipping points and material consequences of a clinical trial are not sufficient for managing the tipping points and material consequences of the enterprise. Only through the lens of an enterprise frame can executives, senior managers, including clinical trial project leaders, manage for value to the enterprise. From an enterprise decision frame, quality issues in a clinical trial are mostly considered must-do spends. From an enterprise perspective, the material consequences the clinical trial project leaders should manage are ultimately the product launch date and the probability of approval, both of which the clinical trial influences. Consequently, the enterprise tipping point of a material consequence should be defined for the product launch date, the probability of regulatory approval, and cost, and those must be interpreted and managed as tipping points for the project. By the way, there is continued and mounting interest to include a patient population frame for clinical trial decision-making. The same principle of tipping point for a material consequence can be applied to this decision frame, and a good measure to use to accomplish this is quality-adjusted life years. Here are a few examples of tipping points of material consequences for each of the 3 clinical trial frames we have discussed. For the patient population associated with a clinical trial, example tipping points of material consequences might include 5 or more adverse events than expected, an error in clinical trial protocol, or an early stop of a clinical trial due to unexpected and severe side effects. For the clinical trial project, example tipping points of material consequences might include a delay in enrollment of 3 or more months, 2 or more cases of patient rights violations, medical coding errors leading to a repeat of the trial, or an FDA 483 or warning letter. And finally, from an enterprise perspective, example tipping points of material consequences include any reduction in the probability of regulatory approval, a delay in the timing of regulatory approval of 3 or more months, any issue that leads to an increase of costs of more than $50,000, and any issue that leads to a reduction in the future sales of the targeted commercial product. Clinical trial project leaders need to expand the clinical trial project decision frame to that of an enterprise decision frame. Important enterprise-related questions both project leaders and senior executives should ask regarding the clinical trial is what can be done to improve the probability of regulatory approval, and what can be done to reduce the time to commercial product launch while ensuring all quality targets are met, and what are the costs of these additional actions, and importantly, what is the enterprise return on investment for taking these additional actions? For more information, check out our website and my latest book, Problem, Risk, and Opportunity Enterprise Management.